After a long 17-game season, the Baltimore Ravens finished with a record of 12-5. They have won the AFC North for the second straight year and have clinched the number 3 seed in the AFC playoffs. They will be hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers in the wildcard round on Saturday. With the regular season behind them, the Ravens shift to postseason football, and we've seen how that has worked out for Baltimore in the past. This time, they look to go on a run with a roster that has the capability of going on and potentially winning this whole damn thing. A lot needs to be done if they want to go on a run. However, when you look at this team and how they've played this year and how they have won games specifically, I believe there is a clear winning formula that can help the Ravens get to New Orleans and win the Super Bowl. If the Ravens follow this winning formula the same way they've been following it for most of the season, they can get this done. It has to be noted that this season is very unique to previous seasons for the Ravens. This is the first time they head into the postseason in which they have faced off against every single team in the AFC. From Kansas City to Buffalo to Denver to the Chargers to Pittsburgh to Houston, Baltimore has faced off against every single one of these opponents. It's not like previous years where they've gone into the postseason and haven't faced off against a few of these guys, so they don't know how they match up against them. Nope, they have faced off against every single one of these guys in the AFC, so they know exactly what they're dealing with because they've gone up against them head to head. That gives you an idea of how you want to play against them. And if you've looked at how the Ravens have played head-to-head against these playoff teams, you will notice a trend. That's where the winning formula comes in. You see, I've been taking notes of how the Ravens have been playing football, especially when it comes to how they look offensively. For much of the season, they've been poor defensively, and that has been an issue. But just like the Ravens always manage to do, their defense eventually finds themselves, they get their footing, they make the adjustments they need to make, and they have a resurgence towards the end of the year. That is what they've done once again this year, and they look like one of the best defenses heading into the postseason. The defense has never been an issue for the Ravens in the playoffs, barring one game where that's happened. Funny enough, what was it? This guy here? Yeah, this guy is the one that was responsible for the one poor defensive performance by the Ravens defense. But other than that, the Ravens defense has consistently shown up in the playoffs. The issue has been the Ravens offense. However, with this winning formula, I believe they can crack the code of the postseason and ultimately get to the tournament. They can get farther than they've ever gone and finally get over the hump that has been clouding this team for so long. Because they've had opportunities. In my opinion, they've only had 2 legitimate opportunities prior to this year to get to the Super Bowl. 2019 and 2023. 2018, Lamar was a rookie. That was a team that wasn't even expected to make the playoffs because they were 4-5 with Flacco. Lamar comes in as a rookie, gets the starting job, takes them to 10-6. They win the division, and they get that wild card game against the Chargers where everything went wrong for them. 2020 was kind of the recession year after 2019 where things weren't the same. The same things that were working in 2019 was not working in 2020. They were 6-5 at one point, and they had to run the table to make the playoffs. Lamar won his first playoff game against Tennessee, but they go to Buffalo, and they just can't do anything offensively. They put up 3 points. Lamar gets concussed and knocked out the game in the end of the third quarter, which pretty much leaves Tyler Huntley to go out there and play the fourth quarter, down 2 scores. We saw how that worked out. And then in 21 and 22, Lamar suffers a season-ending injury at the back end of the season, which if he would have suffered in the beginning of the season, he would have been able to come back. But suffering it that late into the season knocked him out, and we saw the results. 2021, they lost all their remaining games without Lamar, missed the playoffs. 2022, they won 2 games, which was enough to book a playoff ticket to Cincinnati, where they would ultimately lose in a unfortunate game, which we don't need to get into. So when you look at those years, I don't really think the Ravens were really built to go win it all. But in 2019, they were absolutely built to go win it all. And last year, they were certainly built to go win it all. However, they weren't able to get it done. Why? Well, 2019, both sides of the ball. But last year, the AFC title game was, of course, the offense. And the main reason they weren't able to get it done was the lack of running in the AFC Championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Which leads me to my topic of discussion. Derrick Henry. I have done the research. I've got my notes here, ladies and gentlemen. I've got my notes here. And I am ready to discuss why Derrick Henry is the main catalyst for a potential postseason run for the Ravens, and the winning formula that can take this team to New Orleans and win the Super Bowl. Derrick Henry this year has rushed for over 100 yards in 9 games. 9 times this year, Derrick Henry has rushed for over 100 yards. In those 9 games where he has rushed for over 100 yards, the Ravens are 9-0. They're 9-0. They're outscoring their opponents 305 to 151. And their average margin of victory is 17 points. So they're not just beating teams, they're destroying them. Well, you may want to mention, well, some of those games weren't against playoff teams. Fine, let's take those out. Let's talk about their record against the playoff teams that they have faced off, the current playoff teams that will be participating in this postseason. They're 7-0. Against the current teams in the playoffs, the Ravens are 7-0 when Derrick Henry rushes for over 100 yards. They're outscoring their opponents 242 to 116, and their average margin of victory is 18 points. Well, are all of those matchups in the AFC? No, some of those are from NFC teams that they probably won't even see if they do potentially get to the Super Bowl. Let's just focus on the AFC. What about how they look against teams they have fared off against in this AFC playoff roster? Well, in those AFC matchups, in those AFC games, Derrick Henry has rushed the ball for over 100 times, 5 times. Baltimore's 5-0 against the current AFC playoff list when Derrick Henry has rushed for over 100 yards. The Ravens are outscoring their opponents 171 to 62, and they have an average margin of victory of 21.8, about 22 points. The Ravens aren't just beating these guys, they're dominating them. This is against the same playoff teams we're seeing right now. Currently, Baltimore has beaten every single AFC playoff team except Kansas City. In fact, they have 2 losses against the totality of the AFC playoff picture. That is against the Kansas City Chiefs and the Pittsburgh Steelers when the Ravens did face off against Pittsburgh, in Pittsburgh, of course. In those 2 games, they're 0-2. And in those 2 games, Derrick Henry rushed for 46 yards against Kansas City, and then 65 yards against Pittsburgh. It's a noticeable trend. When Baltimore is running the ball consistently and effectively with Derrick Henry, they're dominating. In the 2 losses against Pittsburgh and Kansas City, Derrick Henry got the ball 13 times, 13 carries in both games, and in the 4th quarter, Derrick Henry's on the sideline. So he's not being utilized in those games. And if you want to expand on that even more, the Baltimore Ravens are 0-5 when Derrick Henry doesn't get 20 plus carries, which is actually funny in that situation. But they do have some victories where he hasn't rushed for over 100 yards, but still have won. But they're 0-5 when he hasn't gotten 20 plus carries. But they do have victories in which he hasn't rushed for 20 plus, but he did rush for about 80 something yards. And again, those are more so the games against Cincinnati and you know, things like that. But the point is, Baltimore has a clear trend this year. The main focus is Derrick Henry. The main emphasis is Derrick Henry. And to give some context here, it's not like Lamar isn't playing well in these games. In fact, he's the other half of this winning formula that will take the Ravens to the Super Bowl if they can follow suit. I also got Lamar's numbers in those games. In those 9 games, Lamar Jackson completed 70% of his passes, threw for nearly 2,000 yards, 21 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The stats actually get better when you mention the playoff teams. And when you mention the teams in the AFC, it's also consistent. He's right around 70 points. He's passing for around 200. And again, the touchdown to turnover ratio is incredibly high, favoring Lamar Jackson. It's not like he's playing poor in these games. No, Derrick Henry's dominating and Lamar's doing his thing. So it's clear, these 2 are needed. These 2 are needed. It starts off with him and it goes on with him. The winning formula for the Ravens to get to the Super Bowl has to be utilizing both these guys. Derrick Henry cannot be standing on the sideline in a key 4th quarter in the postseason. By the way, just to add to this, Derrick Henry, whether it's the matchups against all these teams, the playoff teams in general, or the teams against the AFC, his average amount of carries in these victories, about 23. So it's clear as day, giving Derrick Henry the football is equating to high effectiveness, high scoring, and winning. And by the way, in all these games, Baltimore has been able to score at least 28 points a game. Pretty much all except one game, which was the Dallas game, they were able to score 30 plus points a game. So against every playoff team, they have scored 30 or more. So there's no excuse as to why the Ravens can't follow this formula. It is clear as day. The winning formula for the Ravens to get to the Super Bowl starts and ends with their offense. The defense is going to do what they do. Okay? The defense always shows up in the playoffs. They're going to do what they need to do. It comes down to the offense. The offense is averaging 16 points in the postseason in the Lamar Jackson era. That can't happen if they want to get to New Orleans. The offense has to show up. And it starts with this winning formula. In order for the Ravens to win, two things need to happen. They need to utilize Derrick Henry. Feed the king. Give him the football. This is postseason football. It's January football. It's cold. It's cold in Baltimore. It's cold in Buffalo. It's cold in Kansas City. It's cold in Pittsburgh. It's cold in Denver. The only places it ain't going to be really cold is Houston and LA like that. But it's cold for a majority of these playoff teams. And Baltimore's path to the Super Bowl is either them somehow getting 2 playoff games at home, or maybe even 3, or they're going to Buffalo and Kansas City. So there's no area where they're going to be going to a warm environment. It's either they're going to host in Baltimore, or they're going to have to go to Kansas City or Buffalo. That's it. So Baltimore is going to go through the cold to get to New Orleans. The perfect recipe of success in cold weather is to run the football. No one's going to want to tackle Derrick Henry 20 plus times. It wears a defense down. And I'm going to add more to this. I'm going to add even more to this. Derrick Henry is the 3rd most rusher in NFL history in the postseason. He's 3rd all time in postseason rushing yards. Give this guy the football. Give this guy the football and it would lead to success in the postseason. I want to reiterate this. Derrick Henry is ranked number 3 all time in postseason rushing yards. He is the key to getting Baltimore to the Super Bowl. But it takes both of these guys to get it done. Winning formula for Baltimore. Run the ball with Derrick Henry. Feed the king. Utilize the play-action passing game with Lamar Jackson. It's been working all season long. It's made Lamar's job easier. It's made him be even more effective. And it's certainly made the wide receivers and the tight ends' job easier. Because when you have that much emphasis on both Lamar and Derrick Henry, these receivers get one-on-one matchups. And they've shown they can win those one-on-one matchups. So that is the formula. Run the ball with Derrick Henry. Feed the king. Initiate the play-action passing game. Utilize these 2 aspects, Baltimore can beat anybody. They've shown it. They have beaten every team in the AFC against Kansas City. So at the bare minimum, Baltimore should be at Arrowhead for the AFC Championship game because they have beaten everybody else on this list and they've done it in a dominant fashion. No excuses for them. None. If they follow this winning formula, they can at the very least get to Arrowhead. And at this point, if you get to Arrowhead, let's see what you can do against the 2-time defending champions. Simple as that. At the very least, Baltimore should be in the AFC Championship game. And if they follow this winning formula, they might be able to beat the Chiefs, get to the Super Bowl, and win this whole damn thing. So there it is for you guys. There it is. Another element that we can add to this is Lamar Jackson, because Derrick Henry's 6th all-time in rushing yards in the postseason. Not 6th, excuse me. Derrick Henry is 3rd all-time in the postseason in terms of rushing yards. Lamar is 6th. I didn't realize this. So Lamar is 6th all-time in postseason rushing yards. Derrick Henry's 3rd. An element they could use, and I think is an aspect that they should add, it's something that they have started to practice towards the end of the year, is the utilization of the read option. Lamar, read the defense and react. If they're going to put an emphasis on Derrick Henry, keep that ball and take off. If they're going to put an emphasis on you, hand that to Derrick Henry and let him go rumble. I think the Ravens are set up this season with Derrick Henry leading the way in the run game and Lamar Jackson leading the way in the passing game and also being a factor utilizing the read option as an extra. I think with all these key factors, Baltimore's offense can finally show up, and with the way the defense is playing, Baltimore has the opportunity to go win this whole thing. Now, will they follow this formula? I don't know. We may be looking forward to seeing another playoff game where they ignore their running back and decide, let's throw the ball 40 times with Lamar. And if they do that, there's a high chance they go home because it makes you one-dimensional and it makes the defense job a lot easier if they know they don't have to worry about trying to stop Derrick Henry 20-plus times. So we'll see what Baltimore does, but the winning formula is there. Run the ball with Derrick Henry, feed the king in January, initiate the play-action passing game with Lamar. Also try to get him involved. I'm utilizing the read option and get him involved in the running game as well. You do these things, Baltimore's offense will be highly effective in the playoffs. They can beat anybody in the AFC because they've already done it in the regular season, and they can book their ticket to Arrowhead to see how they fare up against Kansas City in a rematch. And the funny fact about it is, Derrick Henry didn't even rush for 100 yards against the Chiefs. They barely used him. They gave him 13 carries and didn't use him in the fourth quarter. And they nearly beat the Chiefs. They lost to them by a toe. It was literally a game that came down to the wire. Isaiah Likely's toe was on the line. If it wasn't on the line, if it was in, that's a touchdown. It's 27-26. They were going for 2. We don't know if Baltimore gets it. So they literally lost by a toe. And they barely utilized Derrick Henry. And that was a week 1 game. The formula to win is there for Baltimore. If they're willing to follow it, they've got a high chance to win this whole tournament. If they go against this winning formula, their offense will fail to show up again in the postseason, and they will ultimately go home. Simple as that. This is now about the IQ of the Ravens. You have a winning formula. Everybody's talked about what Derrick Henry brings to the table. We've heard some of the reports. What's the difference between last year and this year? Derrick Henry. A big part of the AFC Championship game criticism is they didn't run the ball with Gus Edwards. And there's a good chance that they didn't believe Gus Edwards was good enough to beat the Chiefs defense. But you've got a future Hall of Fame running back in Derrick Henry. We knew this would be magic. We knew this was going to be video game. When you put these two together, we knew it was going to be video game numbers. Derrick Henry rushed for nearly 2,000 yards. Lamar Jackson has a total, over 5,000 total yards, 45 total touchdowns. What are you talking about here? What else is there to say? This team should be able to get it done. There should be no excuses for them. The formula is here. Utilize both these guys. Work to their strengths. Feed King Henry in the postseason. Utilize the play-action game and the read option with Lamar, and they can beat anybody. It's right there in front of them. Their defense is researched. You've got these two guys. The formula to win is there, and if Baltimore follows that winning formula based on what they've done against these very same AFC playoff teams, they should be able to get to the Super Bowl and win the damn tournament. It all comes down to how they play. If they execute this winning formula, they'll be in New Orleans and maybe win the tournament. If they don't, they're going home with another disappointing loss in the playoffs. It's up to them. Game's on Saturday, fellas. Let's see what you're made of. With that being said, that is all I've got to say. Be on the lookout because we do have to give out our AFC wildcard preview. AFC North edition because we're going up against the Steelers. Cannot wait to make that video. A lot to talk about there because Pittsburgh has had our number. Pittsburgh has always found a way to make the game close and tough, and we finally made a breakthrough when they came to Baltimore a few weeks back. They're coming back again for the wild card round. So they're looking to get revenge. They've lost 4 straight games. We headed to the playoffs red hot, winning 4 straight games while also scoring 30-plus points. Something has to give. Will Baltimore dominate again? Or will Pittsburgh find a way to pull off the upset? We'll talk about that in the wild card preview. But as for this video, we're all done. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys tuning in. And once again, Ravens flock, these two have to be utilized in the playoffs. The winning formula is there. They can execute this same winning formula against the same playoff teams they had faced in the regular season. It's all in front of the Ravens. If they follow this formula, they can win. If they don't, they may be going home early. It's up to them, so we'll see. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a while since I've done a video. It's been a while, but it's time for some playoff football, so we got a lot to discuss. With that being said, take care, stay blessed, peace out, see you later.